Welcome in, everybody. Another episode of the Full Court Trap coming at you. We got a full house tonight. Surprise, me and Blake finally have some company here after the last couple of lonely episodes. And if my eyes don't deceive me, has Jack Sullivan emerged from the Chicago traffic finally?
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
I am back. I have a lot of things to say. There's
he's
put
back.
out there.
Yeah,
Easy as that.
easy as that. All right. We'll dig in. Blake, how you doing, my man? We recorded the Hubbard interview last night. I know we had a good time with that. How you been doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm pretty excited about last night, that interview. Feel like that's a big first step and getting this thing going in full gear.
Yes, sir. Everybody be sure to check that out. It's live on our YouTube right now. We're going to have some clips going out on the different socials as the week continues. And as you all can tell, we're joined by a new crew member tonight. Dylan Durbin is in the building. Dylan, my man, we've all known Dylan for a long time. We're excited to have him as part of the crew now. He's going to be on every once in a while. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, Derb. Tell them what you want them to know.
It's just been about 6 years coming for this group here, and everybody calls me Derb. We down just
Yes,
talking
sir.
ball.
Talking
All it comes
ball.
down to.
Simple as that. We see you got that Green Bay Packers gear on.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Got a rep. All right. We got everybody.
Jordan Love is the GOAT. Don't let anybody tell you different.
He is. He's my fantasy quarterback. We got a big weeks coming up here with the fantasy playoffs, but you all aren't here to hear about my fantasy football team, so let's get into it. We had a big week of college basketball last week with Feast Week, obviously. All kinds of stuff going on. Sully, we're going to have a chance to talk about UConn a little bit later on once we get to the AP poll, so kind of hold back for it now, hold the line. But what I want to know to start off is obviously we had a lot of teams perform well and make some statements. We had some that didn't perform so well. So I want to hear everybody's winners and losers for the week. We're going to start with the winners. Derb, since you're the new guy here, the floor is yours. Why don't you tell us who you thought the winner of Feast Week was, in your opinion?
Man, my biggest winner so far has to be Auburn. And it's not because, there was teams that had bigger jumps than Auburn had this week, but Auburn's consistency and just their schedule they've played so far is insane. And the fact that they've been able to not only compete, but dang near dominate some of the teams they've played so far is an incredible statement.
Yeah, for sure. I think they really made their first statement with that game against Houston about in the second week of the season, and then ever since then they've been firing on all cylinders. Janai Broome, he looks like a National Player of the Year caliber type of player. They've got a talented freshman that I'm pretty high on with Tahad Pettiford, and a great group of guys around him like Chad Baker-Mazara, experience, talent all across the board. Bruce Pearl, he might be cooking there. I felt good about Bama being the best team in the SEC, but they're challenging that right now for sure.
And that's I know we're going to get into the AP poll and all the rankings talk later, but Kansas was seen as they went out, they got all the transfers this and that. They were by far number one. Auburn has closed that gap exponentially.
For sure.
And I just feel like it's hard to ignore that and not label them the biggest winner so far.
Yep. Well, that's a very solid big winner. I think we can all agree that they were definitely one of the winners. Sully, since you haven't gotten to speak your piece on this place in a while, I'll let you have the floor next. Who's your winner for the big week of hoops we just had?
Yeah, to go up what Derb said, I think it's the SEC in general. We just saw Auburn win the Maui. We just saw Oklahoma win the Battle for Atlantis. And I think a lot of people counted out this Oklahoma team, myself included. Jeremiah Fears, he's a bucket. They also have some other quality people on that team who really showed out against Louisville. Arizona, I believe they played. Not entirely sure. In Providence. But yeah, those two teams in particular really showed out. I think we saw Florida. I think Florida's an elite team. They're only 13th in the AP poll. We'll talk about that a little later. Kentucky, they moved up a week after Feast Week. We got Tennessee in the top three right now. Ole Miss, they did lose to Purdue off a game winner, which is unfortunate, but Purdue's a solid program and has been for the past couple of years. So Ole Miss with Chris Beard, they're taking a step up for the SEC. And I feel like every team except one, who we'll probably also talk about, made their mark during Feast Week and has shown signs that, yeah, the SEC is going to be the best conference this year, and there's a legit chance to send 12 teams this year to the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty telling about the strength of the SEC that 3 of the top 4 teams currently all come from that conference. That's something we aren't accustomed to hearing when it comes to SEC basketball. If you would have told me that statement a couple years ago, it would have been, well, obviously, football, they're dominating, but the SEC's improvement in basketball quality over the years has been exponential, and that league's going to be a war all year long. So, yeah, and Blake, my main man for the last couple of days, who's your winner for Feast Week? I know we've gotten to talk about some games. We had our instant reactions and all that stuff, but who was your overall winner?
I'm going to have to switch gears here from the SEC talk. I'm going to have to go with the Oregon Ducks out of the Big Ten this year. I just feel like they're playing to a different level compared to what we've seen from them in recent years. Dana Altman's taken that team from being unranked and not really talked about preseason to being 12th in the nation now. And I think guys like Nate Biddle, Jackson Shellstad, Keyshawn Bartholomew, and TJ Bamba, Brandon Angel, guys like that, they're really taking that team from kind of like the ground almost to being like in talks of being like one of the top teams in the country. They took down a really tough Alabama team, which even though their struggles have been shown lately, like with Mark Sears not producing at the high rate he once was, they also took down a Texas A&M team that we've kind of touched on that we don't think they're as good as people talk about. They're kind of mid almost. But, I mean, it's still a ranked win, and I really do think that Oregon team was a winner from Feast Week.
Yeah, for sure. And Sully, he in the preseason preview that we had, he said be on the lookout for Oregon. So I think he's feeling good about that.
Shout out Oregon.
He's feeling good about that pick right now. We'll see how that keeps going. The conference switch, they're in the Big Ten now instead of the Pac-12, so that's going to be interesting seeing how they
and they can win the Big Ten. They can win the Big Ten this year.
They really can.
They could.
Oh, 100%.
Could.
I just want to say that. Go ahead, Derb.
Speaking of that, I was thinking about this when Blake first said, the Oregon Ducks out of the Big Ten. How weird does that sound, man?
I know that's like the weird part.
Sucks.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. It makes no sense in geographical reasoning.
We're getting closer. We're getting closer and closer to the conferences just saying, you know what, screw you, NCAA. We're forming our own regime. I think that could very well happen in the next couple of years. But yeah, Oregon, they're definitely going to be up there in the Big Ten. And hand up on this one, I know we may talk them soon. Indiana, I picked them as my Big Ten winner in the preview pod for the conference champions, and my stock, I'm selling it all right now after the disaster of last week. And Blake, I think that leads into something you might want to talk about. We're going to transition into the losers of Feast Week. You have the floor. What you hinted at it in the pre-pod talk we had. What do you think about the Hoosiers?
I mean, I kind of spoke down on the legacy of Mike Woodson and what he's put together. I feel like the Field of 68 kind of touched on it this morning, too. They were kind of talking about how if they were the people that were putting money into this and giving these guys checks, like big balance checks, they would just not sign it off. And I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that. They came out against Gonzaga, absolutely got wrecked in the first half. They were down by I think above 20 or something. And I get Gonzaga's a really good team. I mean, IU is considered a top 15 team in the nation at that point. So I don't think there's any excuse you can make for that team. Also, they lost by 28 to the Louisville team, who, granted, they're on the come up. Pat Kelsey's doing a heck of a job with them. But, I mean, 28 to a team that's not ranked, and you're considered a top 25 team in the nation. That just can't happen. And then you got guys playing flapjack at 2 a.m. when you're playing in the battle for Atlantis. Like that just kind of shows where they're at right now as a team and kind of as a program.
Yeah, I mean,
Trey Galloway, though.
Man,
I'll be doing
I'm
the
not
same
going to get
thing. I'll be
started.
doing the same thing.
Yeah, Blake, you mentioned the phrase Mike Woodson's legacy. I'm just gonna go back at you with what legacy. I mean, the dude's a perennial loser. He's gonna be on his way out of that program pretty soon, I think. He might be job hopping on Indeed soon, but talk about a
You read it on
disappointment,
Chinese,
man.
buddy.
Talk about a disappointment, man. I had high hopes for them going into this season, and they're not delivering so far. And I don't really know how they're going to turn it around, but they got to figure it out quick. Anyways, but continuing on with the losers, Sully, who were your losers of Feast Week?
Oh, it's Arizona. They're 3-4 now. I also picked them to win the Big 12. Big mistake on my part. They ain't winning shit. I'll tell you that much right now. Yeah, it's just a disaster. Caleb Love, I mean, I don't know what the hell he's doing. His body language is horrible. Now, he did hit a huge shot to send him to overtime against West Virginia. Now, they still lost the game because West Virginia is actually not as bad as they were last year. Shout out Darian DeVries. I think that's how you say his first name. But, yeah, this Arizona team, they can't shoot. Trey Townsend, they think this guy is Keyshawn Johnson. He's just not. I don't even know what his role is with the team. He's not really a shooter, as we saw at Oakland. Shout out Greg Campy. But yeah, I just don't. I don't think this is the team really. I mean, they lost Balo, who went to Indiana. They're struggling over there too. Yeah. So I guess it was a win-win or lose-lose.
Lateral move, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think this Arizona team really has much juice going right now. I mean, that loss to Duke should have said something. They looked horrible offensively, and they just got whooped. I forget who it was. One of these teams whooped them in the second game. That's what I thought. And then the West Virginia game, they lost in overtime. But I don't know. I'm starting to form a conversation. Tommy Lloyd, you're next up after Scott Drew. You better do something in the tournament if you even make it this year, or else conversations. And you wanted to go to Gonzaga to follow Mark Few. That ain't happening. I'll tell you that much. Mark Few's a legend. You're not. So best of luck to Tommy Lloyd. I mean, you better pray. This ain't the Pac-12. No more cupcakes. You're playing actual teams. Have fun going to Kansas. Have fun playing Iowa State. Have fun. Hell, Baylor's not even that good this year. Have fun playing Baylor at Waco. Like that. This isn't Washington State. This isn't Oregon State. These are real teams now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to steer off a little bit before we get to Derb's loser, but you mentioned Scott Drew and Tommy Lloyd being seats getting a little bit warm. What coach right now in the college game do we think the seat is the hottest? Me personally, I think it's Mike Woodson because I know Indiana fans are getting fed up with that.
Did you see the podcast? There's an Indiana podcast, and I don't want to butcher the name. I'll probably find the link and send it to you guys after. They went in on Mike Woodson. It was nuts. I was like, holy.
Yeah.
They want this guy actually sent straight out of a cannon of Jupiter. Like, they hate this guy, and it's awesome. I think I respect Indiana fans for this, to be honest with you.
See, that is one thing I will say. I feel like he's had a super long leash for no reason. When you think
absolutely.
It's because he's an alumni. It's really the only reason why. I mean, they should have got Dusty May when they had the chance, and now he's at Michigan, and who knows if he's ever going to leave Michigan. Well, he probably will if a big name comes calling. But is Indiana a better job than Michigan? Do you think so?
Right now, I would say no.
No. They haven't had a good hire since, Bobby Knight. IU hasn't, to be honest with you.
I guess you could say Tom Crean's early years.
Tom Crean worked for a little bit.
Early years of Tom Crean.
They started off hot, ended really roughly.
Yeah.
Better than Archie Miller, though.
So we're all in agreement here. Mike Woodson's seat burning hot right now.
Mike Woodson's. Hold on, Mike.
Kyle Neptune. Yeah.
Kyle Neptune.
Oh yeah,
that's the easiest one.
You're done.
Besides Eric Dixon, that team is awful right now.
Yeah, Villanova. It's a disgrace what's happened ever since Jay Wright left. But Derb, I'm not going to sell you short here. We're going to get back to the losers. Who was your loser of Feast Week?
I feel like it has to be UConn. I mean, you can't lose 3 games in a row like that and not be a loser in my eyes. obviously, you got to give UConn the benefit of the doubt. They're a good program. Hurley's a great coach. But Donovan Clingan's not coming for that door anytime soon. He's gone. And I feel like the writing is on the wall that this team is not what they've been the last 2 years. And then another thing, I honestly feel like putting Dan Hurley in his own loser section is kind of worth it. Just because that meltdown, he had, not even during the games, but to not
the off court type of stuff, right? Yeah.
It's one thing to let emotion get the best of you in the game, but then after the game, after you've had time to let it sit, in the first game, he blamed the refs, and then in the last game or after the last game, I'm never going to play in Maui again. What kind of reaction? What kind of reaction is that as a head coach that he's supposed to be?
It's like a loser mentality almost.
I'm going to push back on that, actually. I want to push back on the Maui thing. Now, how he said it does come across like bad, but he's not the only one thinking this. I shouldn't say most coaches. There are definitely more coaches that haven't said anything that do not want to play in these 3-game MTEs, like 3 back-to-back type of games.
Yeah, it's a lot on the bodies of the athletes.
Yeah. And I definitely see that, but my thing is, like you said, they didn't say it publicly. And I feel like that's a bad thing. Because in my opinion, when you say that, you're blaming the loss on everybody but yourself and your team. You're not telling people how you want to be better. You're giving excuses as to why you wasn't good in the first place.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have plenty of time to talk UConn here in a little bit. I know Sully's been eager to just unload the clip on all this, so I'm going to put a pause on this for now. We'll definitely come back around to it. So my winners and losers of Feast Week, my personal winner, it might be a little bit of an unconventional pick because they did go 1-2 on the week, but I think Dayton was very impressive in their 3 games. You play 3 top 15 opponents. You still won against UConn in blowout fashion, never really a doubt. And then they give Iowa State, who I think is a Final Four caliber team, a really close game, only losing by 5 in regulation. They could have easily won that game if some things go the other way. And then they only lose by 2 to North Carolina in a game where they were ahead big time for a while. It took some crazy stuff out of UNC to come back in that game. But I think that this experience for them in Feast Week with the Maui Invitational, it's going to kind of build them up for March where they're going to have this experience under their belt now and see hey, we have gone toe-to-toe with some of the better teams in the country, even if UConn's not what they are right now. And North Carolina may not be at their peak, but I think if you're a Dayton fan, you've got a lot to be encouraged by with Enoch Cheeks and Nate Santos, all those guys. I think that they didn't necessarily win games, but they looked impressive and they put up a fight. So I'm pretty encouraged by what I'm seeing out of them. And then as far as the loser goes for me, I think that it's got to be Houston. They're sitting at 4-3 on the year so far, I believe. And they've got losses to Auburn and Alabama, which are respectable, obviously. But then you have a OT loss to San Diego State, which they're not a bad team at all. But, given the talent that Houston has and the coaching that they have, I think they should have won that game. Brian Dutcher at San Diego State, he's a great coach. No disrespect to him. But if you're Houston, that's a game that you can't drop because they've got a span here for a while. I'm looking at their schedule right now. They are not scheduled to play a team in the top 25 again until January 25th when they go to Kansas. So
they're not winning that one either.
They're not winning that one, I don't think. And they're going to have this stretch of games to figure it out and try and see what they can fix. But I don't know. When you've got LJ Cryer putting up 30 very inefficiently against Alabama, and that's what's keeping you in the game, if that's your recipe for long-term success, I don't think that's sustainable at all. And I think Sully hinted at it in the preseason, the loss of Jamal Shedd. It's really starting to show that they just don't have that guy.
We're just about to say that.
Yeah, the loss of Jamal Shedd is definitely hurting this team right now. They just don't have that guy that can go get you a bucket. And I'm concerned about him, but Kelvin Sampson, he's a great coach. I think he can figure it out. But as of right now, the way that it's looking, I'm just not super enthused. And I think that they are definitely one of the losers of this past week.
Yeah, no. L.J. Cryer and Wade Taylor are different sides of the same paper.
Hall of Fame shot chuckers.
Yep.
100%. Yep.
I'll still
So,
take the cry over Wade Taylor, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you all know my feelings on Wade Taylor. So, anyways, moving on. Feast week. Hell of a week for hoops. Great matchups all across the board. Can't really ask for much better than that. So, a new AP poll came out today. There's a lot of things that we have looked at today as a group that we've highlighted and want to get into. And I think what we're going to start off with is John Calipari and the Razorbacks not in the rankings already, and we are only a month into the season after a very uninspiring loss to Illinois on Thanksgiving Day. We've hinted at the struggle with mid-majors so far this year. Adu Fierro being the best player, I don't know how long that can be sustained. And there's also been rumors of some turmoil there with Calipari. I think the quote I saw on some kind of message board was people are saying he's lost his fastball and things really might not be changing. So I want to ask each of you, we'll start off with Sully. What level of concern do we have for Arkansas right now? Can Cal right the ship and get this going, or is it just going to be the same story it was at Kentucky for the last couple of years?
So are you asking this season or long term within his tenure at Arkansas?
We can just look at this season since it's year one.
This season, yeah, I'm very concerned. I'll be honest. I mean, John L. Davis is not the guy they paid the money for. I don't know what happened to him. He just doesn't look. He doesn't look like himself. I mean, how he played at FAU, it's completely different of how he's playing currently. There's injuries currently. Jonas Adu, I don't think he's 100%. And oh my God, that Illinois game is awful. I've never been more discouraged and just like, this is horrible. Illinois ran the same play every single time. Tomislav Ivicic, ball screen, pop. Every single play. They put Big Z in a ball screen action every single play, and they did not Arkansas just didn't like change anything, which has been a whole big thing with Calipari. He doesn't make
Stuck in his
adjustments in the game.
ways.
But
Yep,
yeah,
stuck
I'm
in his
very
ways.
concerned. Arkansas is going to make the tournament. Still have that NBA talent, or at least we think. I think Adu Thiero's an NBA player, Billy Flane's an NBA player, but I don't really know outside of that. They still have the guys that are going to make the tournament. They're going to be a middle pack SEC team, though. I don't think they're contending with the Floridas, the Tennessees, the Auburns, the Alabamas, the Kentuckys. I don't think they're anywhere near that tier, and they probably won't touch that tier all season long. But yeah, they'll still make the tournament. I am concerned. There is a legit possibility they just bottom out, though, because the two games they've played against competition, Baylor, they couldn't figure out the zone. Now, albeit credit to Scott Drew actually for once. In the past couple of years, that zone, I don't think Arkansas was prepared to see a 1-3-1 get thrown at them, a 2-3, the zone switching into a man mid possession. So shout out Scott Drew there. Illinois, I mean, that Arkansas defense just made me not want to ever watch basketball again. I'll be honest. So, and the offense, they're taking top twos instead of threes, which is we all know now. And the big 2024. Threes are better than twos.
Yep. I'm looking at the box score right now. In that game, Illinois put up 31 threes. They hit 48% of them, while Arkansas only shot 17 and shot 29%. And I think that's
Sounds a lot like Calipari.
That's just a testament to what the Calipari offense is. I mean, I think that he has his philosophy that he's convinced to work because in the early days of his tenure, it worked so effectively and he had the guys that could do it. But he doesn't have that top end talent, I would say, besides maybe Boogie Flan. You could argue is possibly the one gem on that team that kind of fits like the old Kentucky Calipari mold. But I mean, I'm very concerned about him. I don't see how this gets better. I mean, Derb, what do you think about this? You got any thoughts on the Hogs so far? Not looking too inspiring.
Yeah, no, like my thing is, it's kind of like what Sully was talking about with John L. Davis not being what they hoped he would be. I think part of that is the system he's put in. FAU had a lot better system going on. It allowed him to get better opportunities and, everything in between. And, like, the whole thing is like John Calipari's system It's not a system. It's players. And, obviously, Arkansas does have a lot of talented players. There is no way around that. At some point or another, it could all click for them, and they could have a fantastic year. However, from what I've seen right now, absolutely not. If I was an Arkansas fan, I would be looking at everything Kentucky fans told me and said, flipping out right now. Because, especially about injuries, when your coach only runs 8 players all year long, that's what happens.
Yeah. And I think that we've kind of seen, just part of what Kentucky fans were arguing was true. Cal's going to do what Cal wants to do, and I don't think he's big on change. And one question I want to pose to everybody before we get your thoughts, Blake, is there just a chance that John L. Davis maybe isn't that guy, and we're just seeing that his talent doesn't translate to SEC ball, or is he just the victim of a poorly run system?
I think it's a mix of both, to be honest with you. He proved to be
he is that guy.
He proved to be a high-quality player under Dustin May at FAU. So, I think it's just a lack of being locked in almost this season under the Calipari system, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was he a part of the FAU tourney run?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was probably
he was one of their biggest,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like he's proven that he can be a good player. He is that guy to a degree sometimes, obviously. But kind of like what y'all said, Arkansas doesn't really have shooters. So when you're able to just kind of let everybody else do their own thing and key in on 1 to 2 guys, it makes their job a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of concerns with this team, obviously. And Blake, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest thing that needs to change at this stage for Arkansas to get this on the right path?
I think it needs to quit being the Do Thiero show. He put up over 20-some free throws. I saw he was stat padding basically at that point.
He had 26.
In the second half, it was just nonstop every play, dribble drive down the right lane, and then just rinse and repeat that whole time. If Arkansas wants to be considered a top team in the country, I don't think that's a recipe for success at all. I think Nelly Davis, as we've talked about, he's obviously got to pick up production. DJ Wagner, he's stuck in his old ways from last year, not really producing at a high level. I think Trevon Brazile also needs a little bit more playing time. I think he's a lot better than some people might think. I feel like he has the quality or the potential to be a draft pick, whether that's super late or first round. I don't see him being a first-round guy at all, but I think he has the tools to potentially be a draft guy. And then Boogie Flan, I've kind of noticed that he's a little bit inconsistent shooting-wise. And he's also not the best decision-maker from the with the ball in his hands. So I think those things need to pick up for them to succeed this season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you blame him for being inconsistent, though? Sorry to jump in.
No,
he is really do you really blame him for the inconsistency and the poor decisions? Because let's be honest, I think he's the only guy who can do stuff. Well, I know we just said inconsistently, and now just completely going the other way. He's the only guy who can consistently do something off the dribble, in my opinion, compared to DJ Wagner and Nelly Davis. I think it's just a product of what's going to happen when
product of his environment almost. Yeah.
He's got to be the engine.
And I also feel like they just stick Nelly Davis almost in the corner and just pray to God he's open.
Yeah, and you hinted at it, Blake. Trevon Brazile, that was a guy that Arkansas fans were really excited to get back. I don't think they really expected him back after Musselman departed, and he only got 7 minutes in that Illinois game. And I don't know if Cal is maybe just thinking he's not fit for what he's trying to do, but the talent there with Trevon it's clear. He's got the build and he's got the skill, and he showed it in moments last year, which is why Arkansas fans were so happy to have him back. And I just think another concerning piece to all this is that you hinted on as well, Blake. DJ Wagner. I mean, there really hasn't been any signs of improvement so far from last year. And I really thought that he was in store for a big year because he was riddled with injuries last year at Kentucky. He had to fight through a lot at times with foot injuries and things like that. And he only puts up 8 points and 3 assists in 29 minutes. And if you're going to be an efficient guard at the top level, you got to be distributing the ball more. And he also needs to be trying to get downhill more and get into his spots, like what he thrived at the high school level. But I also think there's a chance that you're just seeing that his game that made him such a prolific prospect in high school just doesn't translate to college. And I don't know what you all think about that. Is all hope lost for DJ, or do we think he's still got it in him to maybe turn it around? Because I'm getting just like more sold out on him as the games go by.
Like 85% sold, like that he'll never play very well at the college level. I mean, even at the high school level, he didn't really move the needle, in my eyes. He never was a really good shooter. He was a fairly decent driver. I mean, other than that, he just didn't impress me a whole lot. And I mean, his numbers and like on Cerebro Sports from AAU, different high school events, and now in college on ESPN on their stat like averages. I mean, he doesn't do many things well.
No, not at all.
But you see, like going back to high school, I think one of his main things is he's basically built like a grown man coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So driving became easier or whatever. Well, when you take that step up, it's not going to be that easy. And when you're essentially a one-trick pony, like he was,
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to say something real quick as a selfish Kentucky fan. Big Z, you could have been so great in Pope's offense, man. I mean, the thoughts of him in that zoom action 5-out with Pope, that would have been absolute scenes. But I think this team is also really missing out on Jonas Adu. He only had 11 minutes. He's clearly not all there yet as he recovers from that injury. And we saw the kind of player he was at Tennessee. He's proven that he can compete at this level. And once they incorporate him into what they do more, I think that could be a possibility for some hope for what Cal's trying to do there. But, I mean, I'm not completely sold out on them just yet because they do have, like we said, the pure talent that can go and win you like 20 games, something like that. I mean, the norm for Cal the last couple of years at UK, it seemed to be like 20, 22 wins maybe. You would have quite a few losses mixed in. And, I mean, I said in the preview, Blake, that we did, this just had the feel of one of those Cal neutral site games the last couple of years in Kentucky. And I think it proved it because, I mean, you saw what happened in the results. And these are the kind of games that you just can't drop because when we're looking down the road in March, this could be something that puts you maybe like a seed line behind or maybe just makes your resume not look as hot. But Illinois, I think, still has potential to be a solid team. But any final thoughts on the Razorbacks before we move on to more of this AP poll?
I felt like we nailed it pretty well.
Yeah. I just want to throw out a crazy conspiracy as well. I hinted out at the message board post, I believe it was from the people at KSR, about how things aren't going so well in Fayetteville. Is there a crazy world where this all just collapses and Cal maybe says, you know what, this just isn't for me anymore, and 1 year at Arkansas he's just done, or you all think he sticks it out for at least 1 or 2 more years regardless?
I think his ego keeps him around for a couple more at least. I mean, it took a lot of him, a lot of nagging from the fans for him to finally leave Kentucky. So I think he'll stay around for a couple more years, even if the ship doesn't sail properly this year. I think his ego will hold him back and keep him at Arky.
I think he's at least got 1 more year. But like my thing is like, okay, let's say they have a bad year this year and they have a bad year next year. At what point does Arkansas start looking at the writing on the wall, start questioning that relationship themselves?
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like things might already be in a little bit of the not so good water over there, but we'll have plenty of time to keep discussing Arkansas as the season goes on. What I want to move on to next is Kansas coming in at number 1 in the new poll. I think there was a serious case there that Auburn should be number 1. We kind of hinted at this earlier with the winners of Feast Week. So, Sully, what do you think about this? Kansas or Auburn? Who deserves that top spot right now?
Yeah, give me Auburn. Beat Houston. They beat Iowa State, and what was a great game in the Maui. Beat North Carolina. Now, North Carolina, they may not be the North Carolina of the past. That's still a great win. And then Memphis. Memphis is also a very good team. That's a good win. They also beat up on Vermont, which is usually a very good mid-major. I just think this is our number 1 team, and this team is elite. And no disrespect to Kansas either. They just haven't played the teams that Auburn has played currently. Yes, they've beaten Duke. Yes, they beat Michigan State. Now, albeit I don't know if Michigan State's really that good, even though they just beat North Carolina, which makes me pose the same question to North Carolina. But, yeah, just give me Auburn. They've played more quality teams than Kansas right now, and they've shown that, that they have the possibility to run college basketball this year. There is a genuine possibility they can just run the SEC. And if they do run the SEC, they're going to win the national championship because of how stacked the SEC is.
Yeah. And, I mean, Johnny Broom, he's in headlines every game getting double-doubles just one after the other, ripping them off. I truly don't know if there's a big man in the country that can contain him. I mean, maybe you could argue Hunter Dickinson if they ever met up at some point, but, I mean, I don't even think Hunter Dickinson can slow down what Janai's been doing so far. And, Derb, you said that Auburn was your big winner of Feast Week, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and think that you're probably taking Auburn as your number 1 over Kansas right now.
Yeah, I definitely am. And, I feel like Auburn's just proven more. And honestly, I feel like Kansas has been, I know they're undefeated, but I think they've been a little bit disappointing so far, on the court.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at them on paper, you look at all the money they've spent, you think, oh, they're the clear number 1, they should be the best. Yeah, I just don't think that they've showed that yet. They're what I like to call an on-paper team. On paper, they look absolutely beautiful, and I've yet to see that so far.
Yeah, for sure. Blake, how are you feeling about Auburn and Kansas, this debate? I think that you might be in agreement with us on this as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the Tigers, just like you guys said. And I also think this game that's coming up for them against Duke, at Duke, is going to be really telling of that team. They've blown out Memphis, who I think is a really good team this year. They beat Iowa State by 2, who's known as a really good defensive team. They also beat Houston 74-69, and those 3 teams are really good this year. And they also blew out North Carolina by 13. So I mean, that team with Chad Baker-Mazara, Johnny Broom, even Dylan Cardwell, who I was never really sold on. That kid's been producing at a high level for them. He's been putting up quality numbers for them. And also Denver Jones. I feel like that backcourt is really good for them. The SEC just unbelievably stacked this year, like Sully said earlier in the show. So, yeah, I think Auburn easily has it. Kansas has been underwhelming, like Derb said. I mean, they played a really close game against Michigan State, who, I mean, they don't move me at all. They haven't in the past couple years. They also only won by 2 to Duke, or by 3 to Duke, which, granted, Duke's a really good team. But, I mean, if you're going to be the number 1 team in the nation, I feel like you should have a little more of an edge. I mean, that's probably asking too much. And they also played North Carolina and only won by 3. So I think the Tigers got that argument.
Yeah, and I mean, Auburn, now that the new polls come out, Memphis is coming in at, I believe, like 16. I'm going to check here. Yeah, 16 they came in at the poll today. So last week, that's 3 top 25 wins alone for Auburn, 2 of which were blowouts. It was just always evident that they were going to be the one that came out on top. And then you beat Iowa State in what felt like a Final Four game. I mean, they rallied from a deep hole that they were in and found it within them to come out on top. And that, to me, was one of the more impressive wins in college basketball so far this season, because they showed that they could be put in a hole and climb out of it despite all the adversity, get things going, and just scrap their way back. And Iowa State, like we said, is a very good defensive team, and that's kind of been their DNA with Otzelberger thus far. So I'm definitely high on Auburn. Do we think – I mean, I think it's kind of clear right now that Auburn's the best team in the SEC at the moment. Do we think that continues throughout all of conference play, or do we think a team like Alabama or Tennessee or Kentucky even gives them a real shot for that top spot?
I think down the road it'll definitely be a little bit of a race, just because with the way the SEC is, it's impossible to not drop a couple games here and there. Especially, as good as Auburn is, you go on the road, which I've not looked at their schedule, not who they go on the road to. But just out of examples, you go on the road to Rupp, or you go on the road to Tennessee, or wherever else you get, Florida, for example. Any of them, you're liable to drop them at any point in time, no matter how good you are.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, with the tough road games, I'm looking at their schedule right now. They've got to go, just some notable ones here. They've got to go to Ole Miss, which is a top 25 team right now. They got to go to Alabama, rivalry game. That's always going to be tough. They got to go to Rupp Arena towards the end of the year, more like start of March. They're going to have to play at Texas A&M. They're going to Texas, to South Carolina. There's a lot of rough games on their schedule as far as the environment goes, and their championship DNA will definitely be tested. And they've got a huge regular season game coming up that we're going to preview here in a little bit as that SEC ACC challenge is approaching. But I think that
I actually got a hot take. Now I think about it.
Drop it. What's the hot take?
I think Florida wins the SEC.
Ooh.
Hey, I was high on Florida coming into this.
SEC. I think this Florida
preview.
team's close to elite. Like, they kick the shit out of everybody. They're 8-0 right now. Walter Clayton Jr. is a bucket. They have Elijah Martin, who's still solid. Will Richard, solid. The Australian kid, I forget his name every time. The big right now.
Or Condon?
No, he's injured right now. Yeah, him.
Condon.
He's also very
Condon.
good. Yeah, I think that's my hot. I think Florida's going to win the SEC. Now, they might not be the best team in the SEC, like in terms of just pure talent, or compared to like an Auburn or Alabama. But I think Florida's going to win the SEC regular season championship. That's my hot take going forward.
My assumption would be that it's kind of similar somewhat to the last couple of years, where the SEC ends up being a photo finish, coming down to the last 4 or 5 games of the year. Who can really dig deep and get them when it matters, to close a gap or to hold their lead, whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure. Blake, what you think about it?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Do we think that Auburn is going to stay as the top dog in the SEC throughout all conference play, or we think there's going to be some challengers that emerge along the way and make it tough for them?
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of challenges along the way. No path is like super easy. There hasn't been anyone that just completely dominates from what I remember in a hot minute. I mean, the SEC, especially this year, they're on the rise. Now, I mean, they're giving some of the other conferences the run for the money at being like the best sports conference in general. And I think teams like Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee, heck, even a team like Mississippi State, Texas A&M, some of the like lower ranked teams right now in the SEC, I think those teams can give a run for their money. And I also think like Florida, like how you said, Sully, I think they're also going to be another team to watch out for.
Yeah, I like Sully's take. I mean, I told y'all in the preseason when the initial AP poll came out, and we talked about who we thought was underrated. I said Florida back then when they were in the 20s, and they're starting to make that climb. And I didn't expect them to be as elite as they've been so far, but I mean, it's like I said in the preseason, the talent's there. Walter Clayton Jr., he's a stud. Really fun to watch play when he gets hot. I mean, good luck guarding him. I definitely think that between Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky, it's going to be a war at the top. But we'll see how that progresses as the year goes on. It's going to be interesting to follow. Another AP poll reaction we got here. Kentucky, they are making an appearance in the top 5, coming in at number 4 after just 1 month of Mark Pope, which is, I mean, outstanding job for Pope. We all know that I'm the resident Kentucky fan, outwardly supporting them on here. I've made myself look a little bit foolish after the Duke game, breaking character, but I'm not ashamed of it. Kentucky all the way, boys. I'm thrilled, but Sully, I want to know what you think about this Kentucky team. Is top 5 a good spot for them right now? Do we think they can maintain that top 5 quality throughout the year, or is it going to get a little bit harder as the upcoming tests get a little bit tougher?
Oh, it's going to get very hard for them to maintain top 5 in the AP poll. Now, to be honest, I don't really care about the AP poll. I think there's a lot of interesting voters in there, to say the least, who have certain agendas, but that's besides the point. They have 17 quad 1 games currently. I think that's the most in the country. That is absurd to be playing 17. But yeah, I think this is more of a testament to how good Mark Pope is, though. I think there are a lot of people, myself included, that were like, what the hell is this hire? It's 2 days after Cal goes to Arkansas. Kentucky fucking takes Mark Pope instead of guys like Chris Beard, Shaka Smart, guys who have been like established at this point. But yeah, I think Kentucky is in a great spot moving forward under Mark Pope for this season and for the future. Whenever his tenure ends, I'm expecting him to get at least 1 national championship and a couple Final Fours by the time he is done coaching at Kentucky or in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that myself and a lot of the Kentucky fan base was questioning the hire, but I mean, so far you can't really ask for much else. I mean, that win against Duke was obviously a very, very strong performance, and that's going to be a good resume piece as the season goes on. Blake, how are we feeling about Pope's Cats right now? They're looking good. We think they keep it up and maintain that top 5, top 10 level of play, or are we going to see maybe a little bit of a drop-off as they get into the nitty-gritty of the schedule?
I mean, I think without a doubt, the Kentucky Wildcats are locked for top 10 moving forward. I do think that matchup against Clemson at Clemson tomorrow night in primetime TV at 9:30, I think, Eastern time against Clemson. I think that game will be really telling. That's their first big, besides Duke, obviously. That was a neutral site game, but that's their first big test on the road. And then also followed up by that, they got Gonzaga on the road as well. So, I mean, those 2 games are going to be really important for that Mark Pope ran team. I think they're playing beautiful basketball. I also want to mention that fight that kind of broke out. I mean, I thought it was a little funny that Clash Peters, unranked, randomly just slams into, I think it was Amari Williams, and you got him clapping and laughing at the guy in his face, basically. I mean, that team, as soon as that happened, it was a close game, like a 5-point game, I think. And then as soon as that happened, they just took the brakes off and they just went full pedal and absolutely crushed the Panthers. So, I mean, I think that Kentucky team, I think they're without a doubt going to be one of the hardest teams to play against, whether that's on the road or at home. I just think that offense is ran beautifully. And I also think how he's using analytics at halftime too. I think that's really impressive. Because, I mean, John Calipari, he would have never done that. He never did do that at Kentucky. He probably doesn't even know Evan Maya, who's a college basketball guru with analytics. Mark Pope actually mentioned him the other day. And I highly doubt someone like Calipari even knows that guy exists.
Yeah, I don't know if Cal is fully aware of the term analytics in general. So, but when you mentioned the scrap that broke out there with Clash, I think after that happened, it was 12 minutes left in the game, and they put up 30 or 40 points in those last couple minutes.
Yeah, it was manslaughter.
That was just an explosion, and that goes to show this offense, they can get it rolling whenever they want. When they really lock in and play the brand of basketball that Pope wants them, it's going to be tough to stop them. I mean, obviously the team they were going against, maybe not the highest level of competition, and they're really going to be tested this week, as we're going to get into later. But the connective tissue of this group, like Pope, he tends to use that phrase a lot. He really likes the word connective tissue. He's a very in-depth coach, which is a breath of fresh air after Calipari. But you can just see that they're really banding together, and it's a group of guys that goes out there and fights for each other, and they play for each other. And they've got a coach that's lifting them up the whole way and just letting them go out there, play loose, have fun with it. And yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit for this group. We'll see. Derb, what are your thoughts? I know that you're a big Kobe Bryant guy yourself, big fan of his. You got to be encouraged with what we're seeing out of Kentucky so far this year, I assume.
I am. I'll get back to the original question here in a second. Like, speaking of Kobe Bryant, like a guy like him, like he did not have a good game really versus
Georgia State.
He started out rough, but guess what? He still got back on the other end of the court. Got that big block there to kind of help get that run started. You know, that is one thing. Is like that's something that sets this team apart to me from teams in the past. Is like even when guys aren't having great games, like Jackson Robinson versus Duke, they're still able, like offensively, that is, not having great games. They're able to kind of take that step back and figure out other ways to impact the games. And I think players and plays like that will end up keeping Kentucky in the top 10 for sure. Top 5, we'll see. My only concern with that so far is we're yet to see how good Duke is, I guess, really.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Talent said they've had some decent wins, but I get that, like, kind of what Blake said and Sully said earlier, you know, this week is like the first like big true test Kentucky has. I think we'll be able to tell a lot more after that.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess circling back to how we think they can sustain this level of play for each of you personally, what do you think is the biggest thing we need to see out of this group moving forward for them to keep fighting at that top tier of college basketball with all the rest of the big dogs? I know Sully said that it's going to be hard for them to maintain this level of play, like top 5, top 10 as the season goes on. But what do we think is the biggest thing that needs to improve, or what you would like to see more out of them as we go on throughout the year? And I'll start with you, Sully.
The thing I want to see the most, actually, is Jackson Robinson's aggression. I do think there's times where you can just see him kind of just fade underneath whoever's going off. I do think he's 6'6", I think, and he was doing it against Georgia State, so credit to him. But there are some games, I think Duke also just had a great defensive game plan. They're a great defensive team to begin with. But this is just 2 weeks ago, at one point, I don't think a player of Jackson Robinson's caliber can have 1 point against a team of Duke's caliber. Now, the SEC is going to have a lot of teams who are of a strong caliber and teams that will play defense and teams that can beat Kentucky. And 1 point isn't going to cut it. So my thing is the aggression for Jackson Robinson, getting downhill, not settling for threes. I think if Jackson Robinson can become more aggressive with the ball, when they go on that little drop coverage off ball screens to immediately attack the paint, I think Kentucky will be in great shape moving forward if Robinson obviously follows that path.
Yeah, and I will say that if Robinson, they've got 2 tough tests this week, as we've said, and we're going to get into that here in a bit. But if Robinson goes this week again like he did in the Duke game, I think there might be a real chance that 0-2 is on the table, because you're going to be going into a hostile environment at Clemson. You know they're going to be ready to go because they've never – I can't recall the last time Kentucky took a trip down to Clemson for basketball. You know they're going to be amped up. You're going to see your leadership get tested in a game like that, and then they've got to go out to Seattle and play Gonzaga on a neutral court. But, I mean, really it's more of a home game for Gonzaga. I mean, they can make the commute over to Seattle just fine. So, Blake, I'm going to go to you on this next one. What do we think? I mean, I think you're going to agree with Sully on the Jackson Robinson, needing to see more out of him and that consistency that you hope. But what else do you want to see from this Kentucky squad to maintain that elite level of play that they've established so far?
I mean, a big caution sign for that Kentucky team right now, I feel like, is turnovers per game. I mean, they're averaging just a tiny tick over 10 turnovers a game. Through 7 games, they got 71 turnovers, and they're currently tied with Incarnate Word and Alabama State, both who are really bad teams, personally, that I think. But Kentucky needs to improve that, especially with those 2 big games coming up against a really hard-nosed Gonzaga team and also a Clemson team who's going to come out super fired up. And they also got a really good big Ian Shefflin and also the Hunter brothers. I think those 2 guys will come out pretty ready for Kentucky.
Yeah, and I think a underrated piece that I just want to see. I want to see how Amari Williams can keep performing against high level of competition. We saw in the Duke game, he had his ups and downs when going against Kaman Malawach, and I think he has it in him to be maybe not an elite interior force, but I think he's a very serviceable one and one that could easily, maybe be like all SEC second or third team. And I think that's going to be important moving forward. You want to see Andrew Carr and Amari Williams holding it down in the paint. And I know one thing I'm not going to be concerned about is the 3-point shooting volume because Pope wants them to keep shooting it, and they're not going to stop. That's the identity of this team. And if they're not going down one night, you better believe they're probably going to be going down the next night. So I would say, yeah, the front court play and maybe just a little bit more intensity on defense. They have their moments sometimes where they look a little bit discombobulated, but nothing too concerning. They're going to obviously be tested this week, and I'm looking forward to it as a Kentucky fan. It's going to be exciting to see them go up against some teams that kind of have more of a pulse now after we've got through this little road with mid-majors. But moving on, another standout thing here in the poll. Oregon, they were unranked last week. Now, congratulations. You all are in the top 15, coming in at number 12. Obviously, they had those big wins against Texas A&M, SDSU, and Alabama. I believe they were the champions of the Players Era Festival, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. They I think were a big winner of Feast Week, obviously, and now they're making their appearance in the poll and getting the recognition they deserve, rightfully so. Blake, what's the most exciting thing about this Oregon team moving forward, in your opinion? I mean, with Indiana looking like they're maybe not going to be so hot this year and other teams in the Big Ten kind of being a little bit unknown, like Purdue in the post-Zach Edey era, and Ohio State, they look like they're a solid team. But do we think Oregon can maybe be the top dog in the Big Ten right now and moving forward?
Yeah, I without a doubt think they are going to be that big dog this year for sure. Moving forward, I'm not completely sure because we've yet to see like consistency from Dana Altman. But I think this team's exciting. I mean, Nate Biddle, he just had a really outstanding putback dunk to defeat Alabama, who's been considered like one of the top teams in the country from the start. And he's putting up 14 and 9 a game and also nearly 2 blocks a game. I think that the bigs for them, they're performing really well. Brandon Angel and Biddle. I think those 2 guys are going to elevate that team. And also Jackson Shelstad, who's solely mentioned and hyped up preseason. His numbers haven't been like super earth-shattering, but I mean, he's still averaging nearly 10 points a game, 4 boards a game, almost 4 assists a game, and 1.4 steals a game while shooting 34% from the field. That needs to obviously improve. But I think if Shelstad, if his numbers from the field improve, then I think the sky's the limit for that Oregon team, and especially in a weaker Big Ten this season. I don't think Michigan State's really that good. Illinois, they're shaky at times. Indiana, we've trashed them past couple episodes we've done. Purdue, I mean, Braden Smith is Mr. Consistency. That guy's a really good player. But, I mean, that team, besides him and Kaufman-Wren, I mean, I just don't see them being super good this year. I mean, Northwestern, they're probably at the bottom. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a lot of mid in that conference this year, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely not one of the more appealing conferences, I would say.
Yeah.
Dana Altman, he's inconsistent kind of like in the grand scheme of it, but he's had his moments as a coach. I mean, 2017, he makes that run to the Final Four, and they came very close to knocking off North Carolina, who went on to be the national champion that year. That team that had Dylan Brooks, that feels like ages ago. But Sully, we know you were high on the Ducks going into the season. You can have your little victory lap here. Say what you want to say about the Ducks, and what do you think about their future moving forward this season and even beyond?
I try not to victory lap. We still got a very long season ahead. But how the Ducks are playing, they struggled against Portland early on. I was like, oh no, it might be over for them. They might be screwed. They went to overtime in Portland. Probably shouldn't even won that game, to be honest. But yeah, they're playing really well. The Players Festival was a big success for them. Outside of them getting the NIL money, they didn't need that at all. But that's besides the whole point. They're playing good basketball. They are a legit contender for the Big Ten to keep this short and sweet.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking at their schedule right now, and it looks like moving forward, I'm seeing only 3 games against ranked opponents the rest of the way as things stand right now. Obviously, that's subject to change with the rankings. So I think that a run through the Big Ten is very possible for them. And Derb, I would imagine that you probably agree with us on this one. Oregon's probably one of the top dogs, if not the top dog in the Big Ten.
I do. And I don't know a ton about Oregon. I know they had a good amount of transfers come in this year. Like I said, obviously they went out and they proved it against Alabama. And the Big Ten doesn't have a ton of competition right now outside of Michigan, really, in my eyes. So, yeah, I think they're definitely one of those up there.
Yeah, I like the ad in the offseason, TJ Bamba. I thought he was a pretty good pickup for them. And he's been a little bit inefficient shooting percentage-wise, but he's putting up 13 a game so far. And they've got other guys on that roster as well, like we mentioned with Shellstad and Biddle. They're definitely encouraging to watch at this point, and we'll see what they keep putting together as the season goes on. But now to the main event of the AP poll. I know Sully's been waiting on this segment for a while now. UConn from number 2 all the way down to number 25, a 23-point landslide for Hurley and the Huskies up there in Stores. I mean, I was waiting for him to cue up that one, but, that picture kind of sums up the mood of the program right now. And it was, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a horrible week. Dan Hurley kind of made a fool out of himself in moments. I mean, I'm still a Dan Hurley fan, but I stated on the instant reaction after the Memphis game with Blake, you got to keep your ego in check. You got to keep your temper in check. You could make the argument that maybe that Memphis game turns out differently if he keeps it together. But, man, I mean, this team, I truly think the only reason that they still have a number next to their name right now is just because of what they've been as a program the last 2 years. I'm sure we can all agree to that, and I'm extremely concerned. I would say that the chances of a three-peat right now are slim to none. And, yeah, I mean, Dan Hurley, he looked like he was slowly descending into madness there during his press conferences this week. He kind of my favorite moment was when he was talking about the moment on Sully's camera right now, actually, where he got teed up, and he was like, maybe I lost my balance or something, or was taken aback by the absurdity of the call, and he just gives this deranged smile into the camera like he's Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I mean, it's all just going wrong right now. And Sully, the floor is yours. You said going into the season you weren't high on this team at all. You even said that round of 32 exit could be very possible, and I'm starting to see your vision. I'm not going to lie. I'm definitely seeing the way that this season could be a disaster, but the floor is yours. Unload the clip on UConn. You got it.
So you know how I said I don't victory lap?
Mm-hmm.
Take everything back. Big victory lap here. They suck. I mean, I'll be honest. They're not good. I mean, you lost 3 straight games. You somehow lost to Colorado. I couldn't name 3 players in Colorado, respectfully. No disrespect to them and to Ted Boyle. But, yeah, this team's horrible. What the hell is that? Their point guard play, abysmal. Their defense, abysmal. Their center rotation, abysmal. It's just a disaster everywhere. Now, Aiden Mahaney, we're gonna get to you. You suck. You're not good at basketball. You're not built for Big East level basketball. You can see this too. I don't really care. You'll beat me in a 1v1. That ain't saying much. But you ain't built for Big East basketball. Just put it out there. I don't know why you left St. Mary's. St. Mary's is the perfect spot for you. Money, maybe. But, I mean, Kentucky was looking at this dude, and it was between Kobe Brea and Aiden Mahaney. How did you take Aiden Mahaney over the best shooter in college basketball?
Yeah, I think we know who won that deal.
Yeah, well, I think it was over after the first game. But anyways, yeah, this you might say, oh, I don't think the three-peat's looking likely. Shit, I don't even think a second weekend's looking likely right now, the way they're playing. 8 games in, and I'm already out on the UConn Huskies. They shouldn't even be ranked. It's bullshit that they're ranked. And the people who keep them ranked, the AP voters, need to be looked at in a certain sense because this is stupid. Actually rank the teams that are actually playing good basketball. UConn is not playing good basketball. Their defense is abysmal, like I said. Point guard play, Hassan Diarra. Yeah, I think that experiment's over. Let's go to Ahmad Noel. Let's get a guy who's going to be here for probably 4 years. Let's get him trained up to be the next point guard for UConn. And there's transfers, or sorry, not transfers. There's rumors of kids already getting ready to transfer. Yeah, I'm not shocked. Dan Hurley, you looked like a loser in that Memphis game. You were sitting there crying, calling the refs a joke. That's just not how it works. And you can send the Dan Hurley goons after me. I don't really care. I'm still going to victory lap on the Dan Hurley goons. And that's probably why they've been so bad. The Dan Hurley goons are focused on me. That's all I'll say.
I saw a very funny tweet that kind of sums up the UConn fan base thoughts on Aiden Mahaney so far. It was this guy, random account, I don't remember. Shout out to him, though. It was hysterical. He reposts the letter of intent that Aiden Mahaney signed, like where all the schools announce them typically. And he said, this is the day the program died. When Aiden Mahaney got on board, out of the transfer portal, that was just it for them. And I mean, I see the vision, 5 points and only 31% shooting. Like, that's not the guy that you were hoping to get after he just put up 13 a game last year at St. Mary's. And he was so bad in those first 2 games of Maui that they just full on benched him in the Dayton game. Like, he didn't get much time. He only saw 8 minutes and put up a nothing burger in points. And yeah, it's a disaster. I mean, Hassan Diarra, I was trying to spell out his name in our group when talking about UConn this week, and it kept autocorrecting to diarrhea. And I mean, that's kind of what his play's been like so far, to be honest with you.
That was the shot selection, too, at the end of the Colorado game.
Yeah.
Summed up right there.
I think that the autocorrect kind of saw the vision there. And I mean, Caravan, he wasn't looking the best in moments. I guess if you want to point out a couple of bright spots, McNeely had his moments, Solo Ball had his moments, but this team just does not look like a cohesive unit right now. And Blake, I think you probably are on board with us here on this. What do we think is going on in stores right now, and how does this get fixed, or is it just not fixable? Is this going to end up being a throwaway year for Danny Hurley?
I mean, I feel like Sully really touched on literally everything I was thinking and was wanting to say. I think the AP poll should have an asterisk beside UConn's name. I feel like they're taking the past 2 national championships into consideration. I feel like if Dan Hurley wasn't that coach, they wouldn't be ranked. Like, there's no questions asked about that.
100%. Like, if this was old UConn basketball with like Kevin Ollie, they're not even sniffing the top 25.
No, they'd probably be.
This is just strictly out of respect to Danny Hurley. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's the problem with what's going on there right now. Derb, you might agree with me. I think this just is poor roster construction. I mean, all around.
And I feel like the guys aren't responding to Hurley's coaching style well. I mean, there's guys, Solly touched on this too, but there's guys already talking about wanting to leave the school, and it's not even December, or it is December. It's not even conference play yet. Like, that's actually unreal to me. Going from back-to-back national championships to now having talks about Hurley being a crybaby almost. And how they shouldn't be top 25. But I mean, it makes 100% sense. Their defense is lackluster. They're not giving any effort. It's just a shit show, to be honest with you, right now in Connecticut.
Yeah, Derby, you think this is just poor roster construction? Is that what seems to be the problem, or is it deeper than that?
I don't really know what it is. I mean, I already kind of sounded off on UConn a little bit in the loser section. Like, one thing I will say is, like, I had more say after this too. But, like, one thing I will say, if anybody needs to win, it's Dan Hurley, because the stuff he pulls on the court and off, that doesn't play for a coach that's not winning. So if this is more than just a one bad year situation, I think the narrative on him could switch very quickly. And then, speaking of roster construction, I think UConn's almost kind of trying to figure out what they're like without Klingon. Because if you think their two natty teams had him. Their defense was great. They had him anchoring the post. He's not coming back. He's gone. Signed an NBA contract. He's not coming to the door anytime soon. And, the way I think about it kind of is similar to, this may just be me, like with Georgia football with Brock Bowers. They had their best years with Brock Bowers. Now that he's gone, they've not looked like who they were in years past, and they went back to back. So I wonder if it's kind of a similar situation where they had so much built on one guy. Obviously, what was it? Was it Stephon Castle? Is that
Stephon Castle.
Yeah, he was a dog, great player. But, he was also only as good as the players around him. And I don't think that there's any of those kind of guys at UConn right now. I don't think they have that guy. Because Caravan, in my opinion, he's the kind of guy that does best as your number 2 option or 3, whatever. Absolute lethal guy in that kind of position. But the moment you put him in the starlight, I don't think he's him.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think we're seeing, like, Caravan, when he's put into this spotlight as the main guy and who UConn kind of wants to center themselves around, I just don't think it's going to work. I mean, he was very effective on those rosters the last 2 years with the role that he had. But shout out to Terrace Reed. He's putting up 11-9. He's been a decent add in the portal. But all around, simply put, this is not a good basketball team right now. And I don't really know how this gets better unless Aiden Mahaney improves exponentially and Hassan Diarra improves exponentially. And I don't know if they have it in them, to be frank.
Actually, can I tie back into something real quick?
What was that, Derb?
I was like, can I tie back into something real quick? I was going to say,
yeah, sure.
Caravan being UConn's best player is similar to Adufierro being Arkansas's best player. That's not a winning formula. It's not going to take you that far.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that comparison for sure. It's pretty spot on. I mean, you've talked about UConn's flaws and obviously Dan Hurley making a fool out of himself. But in your opinion, if you just look at this situation all around, all the pieces of this roster specifically, what's it going to take to fix this? And is it as simple as just seeing a major improvement from Mahaney, Diarra, and the guys who are underwhelming, or is it going to take a lot more of a group effort as compared to just like 2 specific individuals?
Definitely a group effort. Defensively, they're not playing as a group. They're not playing as a unit, as we've said. But individually, though, that is playing a point. I mean, they don't have an NBA point guard or a guy who could hold his own, I should say, in Tristan Newton the previous few years. Now they're at Hassan Diarra, who I think is at best a backup or 6-man level guy, and Ahmad Noel, who's a freshman and probably should be playing at this point over Aiden Mahaney. And then at your big spot, you have Samson Johnson, who's I guess he thinks he's playing a different sport. He's falling out in 12 minutes every game. And then you have Terrace Reed, who also is falling out, but is putting up numbers and also playing the worst defense known to man under the rim. So, yeah, it's just rough. Like, I do think they'll recover because it's UConn, and the Big East sucks. Like, let's be honest. There's not many good teams in the Big East. I think Marquette is probably the only one, and I'm shocked, too. I was you can say a hater of Marquette. I didn't think they were going to even make – I think a hot take of mine was, they might bottom out and miss the tournament. Well, that's not looking likely at all. They're going to make the tournament. But, like, Creighton's not really that good. which I'm not shocked about. That's what happens when you lose a lot of guys that were fundamental to your program. And then let's see, I could not name any other team that's good besides maybe St. John's, but they lost to Georgia. Shout out Georgia, they're good, and then also lost to Baylor off a buzzer beater, but they shouldn't have lost.
Yeah, for sure. I guess play a little game here to sound off on UConn. If we had to distribute the blame of what's going wrong so far this season into different portions, what do we think it is? Do we think it's maybe like just 80% roster's not that good, and then just a mix of like just bad construction and maybe not the best coaching so far from Dan Hurley on what needs to be just like happening from this group specifically, or what do we think this boils down to, like the major factors?
Without doing numbers, I think the major factors is the transfer portal misses, because Aiden Mahaney is a miss. I mean, I think Terrace Reed's okay, but he doesn't bring the same level of rim protection they've had the past couple of years. So it's not a miss yet, but it's trending in the direction of, well, we don't have a rim running guy anymore who can defend the rim at a very elite level like Donovan Clingan did. And then they just didn't get a point guard. I mean, I think transfer portal is like 50%, 50 to 60% is just misevaluating certain individuals. And then I would say like the other 40 is divided between Hurley's antics. I think that's a joke. No pun intended of him calling a ref a joke. Yeah, I think it's Hurley's antics. Defensive definitely is their defensive effort, and what is just put out there on the court is also a nightmare too. I would say that's divided into the 40%.
I think it's kind of, in ways, I think it's a 50-50 split almost, just between the misses in the transfer portal. I mean, I think Aiden Mahaney being this bad so far is a lot bigger deal, because they kind of expected him to be the floor general of that roster, and just the roster around him, it's obviously not up to par. But I think a lot of people aren't mentioning as well that they lost so much from that team last year. I mean, you lost a guy that could create a shot like Cam Spencer, and then Tristan Newton, he was a dog in the front or backcourt, excuse me. And then you had Stephon Castle, who was obviously NBA level talent. We saw him get drafted back in June. And Clingan, I mean, he was one of the best interior forces you could ask for in college basketball when he was at UConn. And I just think that championship DNA leaving the program really did take a toll on him. And Blake, I would imagine you kind of agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, you guys all touched on it already. I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet. Alex Caravan is the number one option. Not a good thing. That defense, terrible. I also think Hurley, his blame shifting almost on why they lost those games this week at the Maui, and him not wanting to do it. I think that's a lot of crybaby mentality. And yeah, the team doesn't move me at all this year. Like, they don't have Adama Sanogo. I butchered that name, I already know. Donovan Clingan. They don't have those guys anymore. They don't have that great core that they had, Tristan Newton and Stephon Castle. Like, those guys ain't coming back to help Hurley do damage in the Big East.
Yeah, I mean, Derby hit on that earlier with the talent going out, obviously. So I think that kind of puts a bow on UConn. I mean, not a top 25 team right now. They're going to hang around in the rankings for at least this week. I mean, they've got a test coming up here against Baylor that we're going to talk about, but that transitions perfectly into what we got going on. Tuesday and Wednesday, we got some big games going. SEC ACC Challenge is getting underway, and the Big 12 Big East battle is getting underway. We're going to do some rapid fire picks here, maybe dive into some key matchups where we think these games are going to be won and lost. We're going to get one out of the way first that is probably going to take zero discussion. The first game of the Big 12 Big East battle, Cincinnati, the number 14 team in the country, going against Villanova. To keep it short, Villanova stinks. Yeah, Villanova stinks. Cincinnati is only a 3.5-point favorite on ESPN betting, which I think is criminal. I think they're going to hammer that. And yeah, Derb, I know you're eager to get in on this one. We think it's going to get ugly for Villanova.
I'm about to go sell the house and then put it on Cincinnati 3.5.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Blake, how you feel about it? I think this is going to be pretty much just a round table agreement here.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be like the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight. Like Mike Tyson, like he didn't show any fight. I don't think Villanova will show any fight either. That team is awful. Eric Dixon's the only thing that's going well for them. They got guys like Wooga Poplar who are shooting inefficiently as can be. Jordan Longino. And then like that roster construction just sucks. Kyle Neptune, awful coach. Should have never gotten that job after Kyle Wright. Cincinnati, I think they're easily gonna hammer that 3.5 point spread. Daniel Skillings, he's a really good player, I think. And also Dylan Mitchell, a Texas transfer. I think those two guys would dominate that game.
Yeah, I truly think Villanova's only getting this kind of just grace here because of the name on the program. But Sully, I'm assuming you're not going to be the brave soul that goes out and predicts a Villanova win here.
Hell no. Give me Cincinnati. Let's move to the next team. I don't want to talk about Villanova.
Yep.
I'm so done with them.
That's about as quick of a recap as you're probably ever going to get. We got a little bit of a more intriguing matchup, I guess you could say, but this one could get ugly as well. We got Syracuse versus Tennessee. Tennessee, 19.5 point favorites right now. I don't know if they'll win by that much, but I think maybe 10 to 15.
Wait, what?
Yeah, 19.5. Yeah, they're favored by 19.5.
Where's the game at?
I believe it is in Knoxville. I'll double check here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I expect Tennessee to win the game. I expect them to win. I don't think it's going to be that big of a margin. I think it could be 10 to 15, but 19.5, I don't see that happening. I don't know about you all, Sully. What do you think?
I'm going to take Tennessee, but not by 19.5. I mean, this will probably be a low-scoring game. So, yeah, I'll just take Tennessee. Not the spread, though. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I would also take Tennessee here. I would, honestly, if I would put money on it, I would assume that this game will probably be one of those where it's like 26-30 at halftime. And then Tennessee gets it to like a 14-point lead and kind of sails on that in the second half.
I mean, yeah, I personally don't think the 19.5 spread is telling of that Syracuse team. But I mean, I do think it won't be a very close game. I mean, they've struggled against Lemoyne. They've struggled against Colgate. They lost to Texas Tech. Both those teams are unranked as of right now. So I don't think the 19.5 is it's not going to be that high of a game. Maybe 10 to 15 points, but over 19.5, that just seems kind of crazy. Granted, it's at Knoxville, but
yeah, maybe Vegas knows something that we don't. I'm not buying that. If you're a fan of the Orange, I guess if you want a bit of hope going into this game, J.J. Starling, maybe he goes off and has a great performance. He's averaging 19 so far this year on almost 50% shooting. So I think it would take a tremendous effort out of him. And some guys on Tennessee, such as Chaz Lanier and Zakai Ziegler, not having a good night, and that supporting cast around him not being able to overcome it. But yeah, give me the Vols in that one. And another SEC, ACC matchup, we got Georgia Tech going into Oklahoma. To keep playing the spread game here, Oklahoma is favored by 10.5 currently. They're coming in ranked 21 in this new AP poll. Georgia Tech, not off to the best start this season, 4-3. I think we're all going to agree here. Oklahoma wins. Do they cover, or what are we feeling on that?
Take the point. Take the cover too.
It's at Oklahoma, Derb.
Okay, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if they don't cover, they'll be close to it for sure.
Yep. Blake, what do you think?
I mean, they've touched on it. They're easily going to cover the spread. I think that duo of Fears, and I think his name's Javion Moore, if I remember it. remembering it. Oh, Jalen Moore, my bad. I think that duo is really good this year. They just put on a show, actually, at Battle for Atlantis. I mean, I don't think Georgia Tech has any chance in that game.
And then we got another SEC ACC matchup. We got two more to round out the Tuesday night portion here, but this is a bit of a more intriguing matchup. Wake Forest, Hunter Sallis, they're going into College Station and taking on the 22nd ranked Aggies. We all know how I feel about Texas A&M around here. This one's a tough one for me. I think the home court advantage is going to get it done for Texas A&M here. I think those fans are going to be ready to go. I'm expecting a big game out of Hunter Sallis, though. We've talked about him quite a bit on this podcast for Wake Forest. He's putting up very good numbers so far to start the year. And, Wade Taylor, I mean, the thought of watching him play basketball is never really exciting with how inefficient he can get. He's currently shooting 39% on the year, I will add. I mean, who would have saw this coming? I mean, we talked about it in the preseason. This is just what you're going to get with him. And I think Texas A&M comes out on top here. They're listed as 8.5-point favorites. And Sully, how you feel about this matchup, Hunter Sallis and the Demon Deacons going into College Station?
Jacob, I don't think this Wake Forest team is really good at all, I'll be honest. So just give me A&M. Maybe not by the point, not the spread, but I'll take A&M to win this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'll take a death by fire if it happens. Give me Wake Forest.
Oh, we got our first bold prediction of the night. Derb's right with the Demon Deacons.
I am unmoved by Wade Taylor. Completely unmoved. Listen, get that man in Nashville, and he'll be the best player you ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere else? Who was it? Tyrese Radford? Wasn't he the one that was on Texas A&M there?
Yeah, he was. He was a sidekick last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, see, I think without him, I don't know. I'm unmoved by Texas A&M. I think he was their heartbeat.
That's fair. Blake, are you going to join Derb on the Demon Deacons train, or are you going to come over to the College Station side with me and Sully?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Aggies here. I mean, it's easy, or as easy as a Dr. Seuss book to read that Wake Forest team is not good at all, besides Sallis. They got their ass kicked, basically, against Xavier, who was ranked at the time. And also, they just lost by nearly 20 points to a Florida team who we've touched on. So, I mean, I don't think they stand a chance. I mean, Sallis, we love him over here at the full court trap. But besides him, that team, I don't like it at all.
You know, listen,
yes, sir.
Sallis 30 ball coming up soon.
Hey, I could see him getting a 30 ball. I still don't think they're going to win because that team just isn't really that great around them. But
no, listen, step back game winner over Wade Taylor.
If he gets that, we will clip that and put it on the TikTok page. But I don't know about that. But moving on, I think this is the most intriguing matchup of the night. We've got Ole Miss, the number 23 team in the nation. They're going into the Yum Center, taking on Louisville. Louisville obviously just got some bad news today with Kayshawn Pryor. He's going to be out for the year with a torn ACL. We're wishing him the best in his recovery. He was looking pretty promising in the battle for Atlantis before he went down, and that's going to be a big loss for Louisville fans moving forward, and that's one of your guys up front that's going to be in the trenches that isn't going to be there anymore. But in this one, Louisville is actually favored by 3.5. I don't know how you all feel about this, but I picked Louisville in the preseason as my unranked team to watch for, and they had some good momentum built up at the Battle for Atlantis, and I think they're going to keep it rolling. Give me the minor upset here over the Ole Miss Rebels. I think Louisville comes out on top, looking for a big game from Chucky Hepburn, continue that momentum he built up, and we'll see. I think they're going to get it done. But, Blake, how do you feel about this game?
I got the Rebels in this one. I mean, I know I talked bad about Purdue in a lot of episodes we've done, but I mean, they're a lot better than I've given credit to. They just played them down to the wire, lost on a game winner by 2, like 70-68. That Rebels team has like 5 guys averaging double-digit points right now, with Jalen Murray leading the way with 14 a game and shooting nearly 50% from the field and from three. And then they got guys like Matthew Morrell, Sean Padilla, also Jamin Brakefield, who's been in college for God knows how long, like 5 years now, 6 years. It feels like that, honestly. But he's been improving a lot recently. And also, Dre Davis has been putting up good numbers, 11, 5, and 1. And he's shooting fairly efficient, a little over 40% from the field. So I think that team ends up taking that game.
Sully, how you feel about this one? L's up. Simple as that.
Yep.
Derb, you gonna go with the revival here or no? L's down.
Absolutely no shot. Ole Miss, I think they got it. And it's not necessarily Louisville being bad as much as it is, Ole Miss is better than expected. But I think the main thing will be trying to figure out who they are without Keyshawn Pryor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they could end up being a little dysfunctional in their first game without him.
Yep. And then we've got I guess what some might consider to be the main event of Tuesday night. We got Kentucky going on the road for their first true road test as Mark Pope being at the helm here, taking on the Clemson Tigers, a team that's just coming off of a second weekend tournament performance last year. They've been fairly untested so far, I guess you could say. Their one loss coming to Boise State. They picked up a win against Florida A&M most recently and Penn State. Vegas only has Kentucky as a 1.5-point favorite going into this true road game. And as a Kentucky fan, I will save my prediction for the end. I'm a little bit concerned, but I'm interested to see what the group thinks about this here.
Who's going first?
Whoever wants it.
I got Kentucky in this one. I felt kind of similar. I don't know if it's similar to UConn, but I feel like Clemson lost a lot off of last year's team. They don't have PJ anymore. He was an absolute dog. He had a huge tournament run. He's not coming back. And I will say Chase Hunter, he's a bucket, one of them ones. But I do think somebody like Lamont Butler or Otega Owe switching on to him here and there, I think will be enough to slow him down and give him enough of an issue to, be a big pivotal point. But that one thing I will say was kind of crazy to me is the fact that I can't pronounce his name, but Clemson's big man, he leads them in assists. He gets like 4 a game. So I'm interested to see how
Ian Shefflin,
yeah. So I'm interested to see how somebody like Amari Williams or Andrew Carr is able to, kind of be able to step in and stop somebody that's a point forward like that.
Yeah, for sure. Sully, what do you think about this one?
Better go Kentucky win. I just think this Kentucky team is just better than this Clemson team, to be honest, in terms of talent, in terms of the size, in terms of the shooting. I think you go Kentucky here. And we've seen Mark Pope adjust in games. When they were down against Duke, they got back in, called their way back in and won. I think would not be shocked if Clemson has an early lead in the first half and possibly leading into halftime. I do think Kentucky makes the adjustments and they pull off the victory at Little John Stadium.
Blake, you rolling with the Cats here? What do we think?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer still in the Cats. I'm going to have to go with them this game. I think it's going to be shades of that Duke game. Clemson's currently sitting at 5-0 at home this season. They played some okay comp, nothing crazy so far. But, their positional size also is something that kind of shapes up with how Duke's was. At every position, it was mostly in favor of Duke, height and size-wise. And that kind of is similar to how Clemson is as well. And guys like Chase Hunter, Ian Shefflin, Jaden Zachary, Victor Lakin, we've talked about them. But those guys are going to be a problem for Kentucky. But I still think that with Pope's mentality and his analytics that he's came up with and still going to continue to come up with at halftime, and throughout the games. I think it's going to shape up well for the Cats. I think they pull off the big win on the road.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, go ahead, Derb.
I was going to say, I meant to say this earlier. Whenever you talk about like what Kentucky could do differently, or like it's your biggest question about them, I just want to go ahead and throw this in. I didn't get to it earlier. My biggest question is Otega Oweh has pretty much been the engine for Kentucky for most of the way. I'm just curious to see if that continues, in this game and then throughout the year, or if somebody else like Jackson Robinson or Andrew Carr kind of brings himself up to be the top dog, even though this team is surrounded by team play as much as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this week's going to be a tough one for UK. I definitely think that 1-1 is the most likely record that you're going to see. I do think they get it done here against Clemson just strictly because they're more talented. I think that veteran experience that they have from a completely portal-based roster is going to come up big here. And Alvin Brooks, in a video they had after the Duke game, The Journey, where they go behind the scenes, Alvin Brooks said we got to use our championship chest. And I think that's kind of the mentality that's going to pull them through games like this, where they're the better team. They're going into a hostile environment, but they definitely should be able to get it done. And I think it'll be tight, but I think they get it done. And then they go on to Gonzaga on Saturday, which we'll preview later down the road.
I do pose one question. If you're a Kentucky fan, would you sacrifice this game in order to beat Gonzaga?
I guess that really depends on whether you think Clemson's going to end up being a good team or not, because if they end up being a bad team, losses like that is what could stain your resume, whereas if you lose to a Gonzaga team early in the year,
it's going to be a
not really. Yeah, the committee's not going to really hold that against you. So me personally, I think I would be all right with taking care of business against Clemson, and then you just take that Gonzaga one on the chin as a learning experience, and you'll have plenty of resume building opportunities from there. Like Sully said, they've got 17 quad one games on the schedule coming up, so they're going to have their chances. But moving on to the Wednesday slate, there is loaded games across the board. And we've got top 25 matchups everywhere, and I'm going to go ahead and just get these quick hitters out of the way first, and then we can kind of save the more in-depth talk for the ones that people are going to have their eyes on a little bit more. We'll start with Virginia and Florida. I think Florida wins easily, and I really feel very confident in that. I would imagine the group agrees with me on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's on board with the Gators for this one. Walter Clayton comes up big. All right, and then we got Kansas versus Creighton. This could be an intriguing matchup, but I honestly don't think so. I think teams have kind of figured out how to stop Ryan Kalkbrenner, and I mean, outside of Kalkbrenner, what does that Creighton team really have that's like super, super standing out? Give me Kansas. I think they get it done. It'll be a little bit of a close one just because of the road factor, but I feel very confident in the Kansas pick here, and I would imagine everyone else does as well.
Yeah, that Creighton team has no depth whatsoever, and if Ashworth is still out for that game, then might as well chalk it up as he is back. All right, I couldn't remember. I mean, even with just him and Kalkbrenner, I think that game's still chalked up. Like, besides those two and inconsistent Pop Isaacs, I don't think that team has any chance.
No, I'm guessing Sully, Derb, you all are on board with that take.
Yeah.
I will say for Kansas, just the last note on this, if you really want to boost your argument for being the better team than Auburn that deserves the number one spot right now, this is a game where you need to come out and you need to leave no doubt. You're better than this team. You need to handle your business. Don't give them any sort of hope. Just go in there, take care of it, and get out. But now we're going to move on to the more intriguing matchups here. I'm going to start with Baylor and UConn. This is kind of the battle of the more underwhelming teams so far this season right now. I mean, we just cut a whole promo on UConn for a good 15, 20 minutes, whatever that was. But let's see here. I'm trying to pull up the spread and figure out what Vegas is thinking about it. It's not showing up. But the ESPN... The game is at UConn, and the ESPN analytics favor UConn 63%, Baylor 36%. So me personally, this is such a tough call. do we really think that 3 losses in a row spirals into 4 for UConn? I mean, Sully, you're the biggest advocate for anti-UConn propaganda on here, so I'll let you start it off while I kind of ponder this a little bit more. Is it going to be 4 straight L's for Danny Hurley, or is he going to figure something out and get a win?
So thankfully, UConn played somebody Friday or Saturday.
At Maryland,
So they
Southeastern Shore
no,
or something like that. They're horrible.
Oh, yeah, that completely
But
blew my
I'm
mind.
gonna take UConn. I'll take UConn
Yeah.
to win this game, actually. I'm still kind of out on Baylor, and I think UConn's home advantage or home court advantage can give them the edge there.
Blake, what do you think?
I'm kind of torn on this, but I'm going to have to side with Sully here. I think the Huskies will pull this off. I feel like Dan Hurley's going to get sick of the nonstop narratives right now on social media, and I feel like he's going to tighten that team up, get them playing at the level he wants them to play. I'm still not sold on that team as a whole. I don't think they're very good anyways. But, I mean, Scott Drew has shown he's not as good as advertised, I would say, this season at least. And, yeah, I don't see Baylor winning this game. Well, let me retract that. I can see Baylor winning this game. But do I think that? No.
Yeah. Derby, you rocking with Scott Drew, or are you going with Danny Hurley on this one?
Yeah, I was going to try to find the betting line for you, but I couldn't do it. I'm not going to worry about it right now.
No, you're good.
My heart wants to say Baylor because I really don't like UConn. But my brain's telling me UConn, and I would assume UConn will win this because Baylor isn't very good either. BJ Edgecombe has been unbelievably disappointing so far. But give me UConn, but I will say this. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the game went either way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on board with you on that one. I'll rephrase what I said earlier. It won't be 4 straight losses for UConn against a team with a pulse because, I mean, Maryland Eastern Shore, let's just be frank here. That's not much of a stout test for Danny Hurley, but
No.
I think they do get the win here and get things back on track. I really don't feel good about either of these teams in the long term this season. And I did say on Instagram after Baylor stunk it up against Tennessee that I would never give Scott Drew any faith again this year. So I'm going to hold firm by that and stick with Dan Hurley.
I will say, though, my one question about UConn is if there is that much like locker room issues, like with players potentially, kind of selling out on their stake with the program and all that, like how much does that affect the outcome too? But outside of that, I feel like you got to go with UConn for the time being.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all kind of agree there. So moving on, we've got Alabama and North Carolina. North Carolina sitting at 4-3 and number 20 in the nation. They took a bit of a drop here in the AP poll. We didn't mention them earlier. Bama's coming off that really close loss against Oregon. This game, it is at North Carolina, so this is going to be a tough road test for the Tide. I personally, in games like this where I think it could go either way, I tend to lean home court advantage, but I'm going to go against that method here. I think Alabama wins. I'm really hoping that Mark Sears can kind of get this thing going again because he's off to a rocky start this year, shooting 35% from the field. It's not been a great start for him, and this is a game where the spotlight's going to be on him. You want to see him improve and build on some things and get some momentum going. And I just think Nate Oates is a better coach than Hubert, and I think that Alabama roster, top to bottom, is much more talented than North Carolina. So give me the Tide in this one. I think they bring one home for the SEC in this challenge. And Blake, how do you feel about this matchup?
I got the Tar Heels winning this one. That was a big toss-up for me, though. I think that guard play between Sears against Davis will be like headliner type of stuff. Alabama's also missing out on Wrightsell. He's out for the year, I believe, from what I read. And I feel like that's a huge loss. Like, he's third on the team in points per game. He's averaging 11.5 a game. He's really good from behind the arcs. I mean, taking that out of the equation of that team, I think that kind of pushes him down in like terms of like how highly I thought of that team. But then on the flip side, I mean, the team that I'm picking, North Carolina, their bigs are like really, really weak. Like Jalen Washington, Jalen Withers, Van Allen Lubin, like those guys don't move the needle at all. But then going up against Cliff Omarui, that's obviously going to be a really tough matchup, and Grant Nelson. But, I mean, I still think that guard play by UNC will show out tomorrow, or not tomorrow, in a couple days.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Jalen Washington and Jalen Withers going up against Grant Nelson and Clifford Omarui. I think
It
that's
just
where you
spells
might.
for disaster. But, I mean,
This
Mark
is-
Sears has been
if
awful
Mark
lately.
Sears does Mark Sears things, I think they can handle business against North Carolina because that front court for UNC is atrocious. And Grant Nelson and Clifford Omarui, those guys are some studs. Sully, are you rolling with the Tide here, or are you going all in on Tar Heels?
Yeah, I'm going with the Heels. This is a must-win game for UNC. I think if they lose this, I think their season can hit like a catastrophic, like disaster level. But I do think the Heels muster up the courage to win this game, and I think that Latrell Wrightsell injury is going to be very detrimental to that Alabama team.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good thing for their depth and their overall outlook on the rest of the season. Derb, are you going to come on board the Bama train with me here? Or are you going to go with the home court advantage and the Tar Heels avoiding the 4-4 start to the year?
I think this game's probably going to be a war. And, like, I'm going to do the opposite of what I did in the Baylor UConn situation. My head's telling me North Carolina, but my heart's telling me Alabama. So, going Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it all season long so far in this podcast. That front court for UNC does not inspire any confidence in me unless they have some major turnaround here coming in the next couple weeks and start to find themselves. But I think Alabama gets it done even without Wrightsell, and I think you're going to look for one of Grant Nelson or Cliff Omarui to have one of their better games of the year so far with that kind of mismatch in the paint area. But moving on, we've got another great battle here. Number 5 Marquette, they're going on the road to number 6 Iowa State. Sully, in the preseason, you weren't super high on Marquette, but they've kind of defied those low expectations you had for them so far. Do you think that they keep it rolling here, or is Iowa State going to expose them a little bit?
I think Iowa State will catch the win in this one. I just think Marquette going into a very tough place where Iowa State was in a very good game with Auburn, and they definitely could have won that, undoubtedly. But I think Iowa State catches the win here, and it's very big for their resume moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Iowa State's a very solid team, and we all know how high I am on them. Blake, are you on board with Marquette here? Or are you going to roll with Iowa State and TJ Otzelberger getting it done?
I mean, this is another like super big toss up for me, but I think I'm gonna have to go with the Cyclones, like Sully said. I mean, Hotzelberger, he's shown to be a really good coach, and I mean that team, all in all, is just looking phenomenal this season.
For sure. Derb, are we gonna?
Iowa State by 13.
I was gonna say, are we gonna make it a clean slate here? I'm going with Iowa State as well. They're one of my preseason Final Four picks. I'm very high on them. I hope Taman Lipsey can start to get things going. He kind of struggled a little bit in Maui. And Keshawn Gilbert, he's been very solid so far for the Cyclones as well. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Cam Jones averaging 19 a game on 65% from the field thus far. He's making an early case for Player of the Year up there with Janai Broom. I mean, am I crazy to say that, or is he an early season candidate on that end?
Not at all. He could definitely win the Player of the Year, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I think he's up there. We'll see if he can maintain that elite level of play he's at so far. And this game, it's what I consider to be the main event of the night on Wednesday. Auburn, the podcast's number 1 team in America, Janai Broom, Tahad Pettiford, Chad Baker Mazzara, all those guys were super high on. They're going into Cameron Indoor. They're taking on Duke and Cooper Flagg, Concanipple, Malawak. It's a star-studded matchup this early in the season. It's one of the bigger games, I would imagine, in the Auburn basketball program in quite some time. And this game, it's really hard to forecast a winner here. I lean towards Duke because Cameron Indoor is such a hostile environment and such a tough place to play. But with the elite level that Auburn's been at so far, and they've been battle tested, just running through Maui and getting things done. Janai Broom looks unstoppable. Him going against Malawak, that's going to be a real test for the young guy there. And Cooper Flagg and Concanipple to see how they respond after some struggles against Kansas. And yeah, I mean, this is the type of games that we live for as college basketball fans. And Derb, I know you're high on Auburn like we all are. I'll let you kick this thing off. Who do you think's coming out on top?
Man, I've been sitting there thinking about this for the last 5 games we've been talking about. I went ahead and looked ahead and started thinking about this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm insanely high on Auburn, and what I'm about to say next is gonna dismantle everything I've been saying about. But I think Duke's got this one. But I will say, if I'm John Shire, because this is gonna be a close game. If I'm John Shire, if I see Cooper Flagg do one spin move in the second half, Buddy's going on the pitch. Buddy's going on the pitch.
No more spin moves, Cooper. You heard it here from Dylan Durbin. No more spin moves.
He's blown 2 games doing that shit.
Yeah, that's true. Concanipple, though, he almost saved him in that Kansas game with that near bank shot 3, but not enough, obviously. And, I mean, you've seen the Duke freshmen have their struggles with the turnovers, not even just Cooper Flagg. I mean, Knipple, he was seeing ghosts there on that one spin into a jumper where he just kind of panicked and passed out of it. We talked about that. We don't have to go super in-depth on it, but Blake, do we think that the star-studded freshman talent of Duke overcome kind of those jitters that they've been working through so far and get it done against Auburn, or do we think Auburn flexes their muscles here and really shows that they are a force in college basketball this year?
Man, I don't know. I think actually I'm gonna go with the Tigers here. I mean, that's gonna be a hell of a environment there at Cameron Indoor. I just feel like the experience is gonna outweigh the young talent there. I mean, Derb touched on it a little bit. I mean, Cooper Flagg, couple games already against good teams. He's came down, done a spin move around the corner, try to ISO in crunch time. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. Like that's not winning you games, I don't think, at this early of the season, especially for a young guy. Like, you can't put that kind of pressure. I feel like obviously you want the ball in the best player's hands, but I mean, you got to get some other play or open shot in that spot of the game. So I do think the Tigers are their age and experience is gonna outweigh the Blue Devils youth.
Sully, what do we think about this?
Awesome you saved me for last. But yeah, I think this game for Duke, the must-win opportunity. This is possibly the biggest must-win game for Duke in a long time. The ACC does not have many quality opponents. Duke's already dropped 2 of their biggest games to Kentucky and Kansas. I mean, this is a must. This is a huge game for Duke, and what could be not their season, but what is could foreshadow what's going to happen to their seed line in the future. Oh, with that being said, give me Auburn though. I think Auburn's the best team in the country. We've seen Duke in the clutch. Not awesome. It's actually awful to watch, to be quite honest. I'm losing trust in Shire as a coach. I don't get the shit he runs coming out of a timeout every single time. It's give it to Cooper Flagg or whoever at the top of the key, run a screen and go to work. And it ain't going to work. It's straight car accident every time on the I-95. But I mean, it's been I'm losing trust in Shire. And this could be the nail in the coffin for my trust in Shire. But I'm going to take Auburn. They're battle tested. They've won a tough game against Iowa State. They've seen a team who's more physical than Duke, and hopefully, well, I shouldn't say hopefully. I'm not biased towards either team here. I'm thinking Auburn can weather the storm against Duke if they start hitting crazy shots and Cameron Indoor.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Derb.
I was going to say one thing. If this game doesn't go into the final 2 minutes, I will be stunned. And I just feel like if the game does get to that point, I think you got to lean on somebody like Tyrese Proctor. For some reason, they just completely went away from him in the Kentucky game. I don't know why, but
yeah, to kind of build on your point with Proctor, I think an intriguing matchup in this game. It's going to be Miles Kelly and Denver Jones going against Proctor and Caleb Foster. I mean, I know Proctor and Foster, they've had their moments, but they haven't really been stellar, I guess you could say, so far this year. And, I mean, Auburn, as a cohesive unit, they've looked sharp. So I think those guard matchups could really determine some things on the way this game's going to go. And in the paint, will Malawak and that Duke front court have any answer for Janai Broome? I mean, I'm high on Malawak as a prospect in the future, and I think he's going to be a pretty high draft pick when it comes time for that. But at this early stage of the year, I don't know if he's going to be able to contain a seasoned vet like Broome. I don't know what you all think about this. If you think I'm kind of hitting the hammer or the nail with the hammer here on that point, or do we think Malawak, he might have some more promise in this matchup than we think?
I think it's definitely an interesting matchup because, going against like Malawak, he's a hell of a defender. Just that length and his shot blocking ability is something. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, Janai Broome is also a grown man and could very well just try to go through his chest. So it's just interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I guess another concern you could have if you're Auburn, I mean, Cooper Flagg, who do we think that they're going to throw out there to try and stunt him and kind of prevent him from doing what he does? Kitchen sink. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I think Flagg, this might be one of those games where he flexes his muscles and shows that he's got that number one pick material in him still, and that I mean, some people have been doubting him recently with the play of Dylan Harper over at Rutgers. I mean, he's been on fire recently, so he's made that talk of best freshman interesting, at least.
You see, the one thing Flagg needs to do is he needs to start hitting more threes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is he? Ain't he shooting like 26% or something like that?
Somewhere around that range, yeah, I believe.
Really? And just 26%.
Let me take a look here. I'll take a look here. He is 44% from the field, and then let's see, going from three, he is 26.9%. Yeah, Dirk's got it right.
Listen, let me collect knowledge.
Yeah, 26.9.
But it's just like in the Kentucky game, there was a lot of times when he was wide open, and he only hit one of them, I think, in that game. And just in games like this versus Auburn, when there's probably a chance where there probably is at least going to be 2-3 times where he is wide open on the perimeter. If they want to win this game, he's got to knock those down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know we'll all be seated for that one. And last matchup to cover this Tuesday to Wednesday slate, we'll hit on it real quick. Number 18, Pittsburgh. They're going to Mississippi State and taking on our guy Josh. We just did the interview with yesterday. A reminder, everybody, go ahead and check that out. We had a great conversation with him, and I know that I'm going to be keeping tabs on this to see how he performs. And give me Mississippi State in the upset here. They're the home team. I think they're going to overcome Pitt in this one. And, I mean, I'm going to sound like a homer here, but, I mean, I think Josh has a big game. I mean, we know the kind of talent he is, the pure scorer he is. Give me the Bulldogs in this one. Sully, who are you taking?
I'm going to take Mississippi State as well. I think this can be actually like a very good game. But like you said, I think Josh has a really solid game. I think him versus Jelon Lowe is going to be a very interesting matchup, as well as Ishmael Leggett, another guard for Pitt. But I'm still going to take Mississippi State. I'm going to take their home court advantage. I'm going to take their physicality and toughness over Pitt.
For sure, for sure. Blake, how about you?
I'm actually going to let Derb take the floor on this. I want to go last.
All right.
Give me Josh Hubbard with a smooth 17, the Mississippi State W.
I like it. I like it.
I'm going to be the villain here. I'm going to go with yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, Josh, if you're seeing this. I'm going with the Panthers here. I mean, they absolutely blew out West Virginia. They played Wisconsin, who I think is a lot better than people give credit for. They lost by 6 to them. They beat a quality Ohio State team post controversy with Aaron Bradshaw and all that's going on with them. They also beat an LSU team who I believe is weaker right now in the SEC, but I mean, they're still a quality team nationwide. So, I mean, guys like Zach Austin, who else am I thinking of? Ishmael Leggett, Jalen Lowe. Those guys are putting up crazy numbers this year for Pittsburgh, and I think that team is going to come out with a win.
Well, Blake's going to be the lone one on that one. Well, we'll see how it pans out. Well, we're going to be back here on Thursday to recap this Tuesday to Wednesday slate. Loaded games all across the board. A lot to keep an eye on here. Definitely going to see some shake-up in the rankings next week with all these ranked-on-ranked matchups happening. But, yeah, another successful episode, boys. We covered a lot. Got Feast Week, summed that all up, and yeah, looking forward to the big week ahead. We'll be back on Thursday with some variation of this crew to recap everything that's happened and get into the weekend slate. But for now, Luke Tackett, Dylan Durbin, Jack Sullivan, and Blake Smith signing off. We'll catch y'all later. Go check out the Josh Hubbard interview on YouTube. We appreciate all the support and the continued support. Looking forward to making some more content for you all in the coming days and weeks and months. So we will see you all later. This has been the Full Court Trap Pod.